Welcome to Family Basics 101. I'm Dr. Bruce McClure, and as we begin the new series this week entitled Family Stressors, we will do it in 5 parts. First, we will look at the working definition for stress, and then we will talk about how to detect family stressors. Third, we will look at the types of family stressors. Then, on Thursday, we will take a look at the impact of family stressors. And finally, we will talk about how to manage family stressors. What is a good definition of stress? Webster's dictionary gives the following as a definition. It's a force exerted when one body or parts of another body presses on, pulls on, or pushes against, or tends to compress or twist another body or parts of another body. And that can be a material thing or a physical body. So Webster's does not distinguish between physical, a person, or a thing. It is simply saying two entities, a body or body parts. The intensity or the force that is exerted on those body parts from other body parts is measured in pounds per square inch. We call that PSI, pounds per square inch. Let me illustrate it this way. Auto tires on your regular automobile, not on the huge Hummers, but on a regular automobile, for the most part specifies 32 PSI or 32 pounds per square inch for a proper inflated tire. Automobiles can run under 32 or over 32, but the optimum pressure level for tires is 32. That's the stress that the tire is recommended to run under. Can it run on less air? Yes. Can it run under more air? Yes. But the manufacturers, for the most part, says that in order for it to function properly, this is how much compression can be put against the tire. Let's talk about a clinical definition of stress. This comes from the Unified Medical Language System, and it is important for us to understand the stress definition as it is utilized for the human body. It's a biological noxious response to demanding and unpleasant stimuli or conditions. Now, keep in mind, never ever mistake the stress with the stressors. It is the biological noxious response to demanding and sometimes unpleasant stimuli or conditions. So the stress is not the noxious response. It is the stress that is driven by those conditional stimuluses. And your stress is the noxious response to the stimuli that triggers the response. Stressors are the stimuli creating the stress. Stressors, those things that happen, those things that are said, those expectations, those are the stimuli that creates the response that we call stress. So stress becomes, therefore, the emotional, physiological, physical, psychological effect of the unwanted agitation, the unwanted strain, the unwanted tension, and the unwanted pressure. It's the response, and different people will respond differently to stress. Let's talk about a working definition of internalized stress. Stress is a compressing within not an object, But stress is the compressing within an individual that disrupts routine emotional and also routine physical functions. Stress presents itself when one feels more challenged than what is expected based upon prior exposure to similar situations. So what you deal with today may create a stress that did not exist yesterday because the expected results, the expected response today might be different from those who are putting those stressors into your life. Stress presents itself when one feels more challenged because of the uniqueness of a present or an imminent challenge. So stress presents itself when an individual feels more challenged of the uniqueness. Now, keep in mind that what stresses one person may not stress the other person. Therefore, we must understand internally that stress is going to impact different people differently. In the Bible, in the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 1, beginning at verse number 8, let's look at a working definition biblically of stress. For we would not, brethren, have you ignorant of our trouble. That word trouble that Paul uses in 2 Corinthians 1 verse 8 actually means pressure. So he says, we don't want you to be unlearned or not knowledgeable of the pressure which came to us, that we were pressed, pushed on from a source, out of measure, above strength, insomuch that we despaired. That word despaired, watch how stress is defined. It put us at a loss. It made us destitute, even of life. This is an apostle of Jesus Christ. And he says very clearly, we want you as Christians to understand the definition of stress. We don't want you to be ignorant of it. How often have you heard people say, too blessed to be stressed? Well, it sounds good. But the reality is, stress impacts everyone. It impacts apostles. It impacts the church. It impacts children. It impacts couples. It impacts the elderly. And Paul says we must not be ignorant of this trouble, this pressure, because it's going to push us. And the PSI on that might not be the optimum amount. It may be more than you anticipated, and it might be less. But nonetheless, stress is defined as those things that compress, and those things that cause one to feel more challenged than they normally would. Come back to class again tomorrow, and we will continue to work with the topic of stress. Don't be late, and don't skip class.